What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the highlights from Steam's Isometric sale, which is going on from the time of this video through the 18th, though it officially started yesterday on August 11th, and as the name would suggest, it mostly promotes a whole host of different isometric games, everything from CRPGs to ARPGs, strategy games, basically the usual stuff you would likely expect from the title. In particular, the reason I wanted to cover this specifically is that while it is not a particularly large sale in the sense that I think the number of games involved is on the slightly limited side, what I did notice while looking through it is that a whole bunch of the, I would say, less common CRPGs and things like that are significantly cheaper than you would probably expect. Some of the discounts here are very substantial. And as a result, I get the opportunity to talk about some CRPGs that I don't talk about as often, despite having played and reviewed them, and hopefully somebody can pick them up for super cheap and enjoy them for themselves. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Now, just to get the usual suspects out of the way, if you were unaware, I'm a big fan of Owlcat Games' work. Now, I know that comes as a surprise to people, and you've never heard me mention this before, but I love Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. That is 65% off for the base game, making it just $7, and then they have a bunch of, I believe, half-off deals for all of the game's DLC as well, so if you're looking for a cheap excuse to pick some of that stuff up, it is available, of course. And then I also wanted to shout out Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, their most recent work, also being on this sale at 50% off for the base game, making that just $25, and then the individual DLCs are 25% off. Not like anything outrageous there, but I figure since the Lex Imperialis DLC just launched, it might be worth mentioning it. Otherwise, though, let's actually dive into the rest of these games, kicking it off with a game that I really enjoy a lot called Tower of Time. Tower of Time is a surprisingly good, if relatively simple game. Now, my personal favorite thing about it is that it has a lot of abilities that allow you to just straight up draw the area of effect within limits, of course, which is especially helpful given the game's real-time with pause battles. Those abilities that it makes ample use of offer a certain level of strategic ability that is honestly just really fun to mess around with and that I like a lot. But the really cool thing about Tower of Time is that, deceptively so, the story for that game is actually really, really good. And if you don't believe me, you can try it relatively risk-free at a whopping price of $3.50 during this sale. Now, I also wanted to, at the same time, mention that if you wind up liking Tower of Time, you actually might consider picking up Dark Envoy. Dark Envoy is an indirect sequel to Tower of Time. It indirectly continues that very good story that is laid out in Tower of Time. While also greatly expanding mechanics and things, I did review Dark Envoy when it initially launched, and they've put out a whole host of updates since that review, so if you wind up liking Tower of Time and want to play more, Dark Envoy is available for just $10 as well. Another interesting one that I noticed was on sale is actually Encased. Encased is a CRPG that I backed on Kickstarter way back when. I actually think it was before I even started doing YouTube full-time. And if you are completely unaware, Encased is a post-apocalyptic RPG of sorts set within an advanced technological dome. Basically, during the 1970s, they find this dome of ancient people of yore, and they start sending people into it. The problem is, while people can go in and things can travel freely in and out, living things cannot leave the dome, so people who go in there, it's a one-way trip. And as such, there's a whole system and hierarchy that develops as trade begins around shipping the artifacts out of that dome for study and technological advancement. And overall, it's honestly a really good and interesting CRPG that admittedly is a little bit jank. But in particular, I think if you like the first two isometric Fallouts, you'd probably get a kick out of Encased, which makes the fact that it's available for a whopping $3 during this sale a pretty cheap and easy way to get a look at it. Now, a much more recent title for me, in that I reviewed it very recently, within the past couple of months, is actually Bloomtown: A Different Story, which is half off, bringing it down to $12.50, and Bloomtown for me was just a really great summer adventure, because it follows two kids that are stuck at their grandpa's house while their parents are seemingly going through a divorce or something, and while that might sound boring on the face of it, they quickly get involved in a plot involving Lucifer, who needs to track down demons that are harassing this sleepy little country town, And then the subject matter actually goes to some pretty dark places, so don't let the cutesy graphics fool you into thinking it's a completely kid-friendly adventure. But I had a lot of fun with it, and for that price, I think you're getting a great deal. Another really fun one is actually 7 The Days Long Gone, or 7 Enhanced Edition, as they changed the title slightly with the Enhanced Edition's release, but that one is 83% off, bringing it down to just $5. And I think that is a fantastic price for this game. Now, I do have to warn you, it is a little on the buggy side. They actually fixed a problem that was keeping people from playing it entirely, which is why I was finally able to check it out several years after its initial release. But I enjoyed playing through this one for a review quite a bit, and in some ways it's almost like isometric immersive sim more than anything else, and it's just a really good time. It's a lot to explain, so I would actually recommend you watch my full review on this one. It's a little wordy to try to go through everything in this particular video, but I do think it's cool, and I do think it's worth people taking a look at for $5. Speaking of isometric immersive sims, though, I also wanted to point out that Weird West is just down to $6 US. Weird West is an isometric immersive sim set in a supernatural imagining of the Wild West, and for the most part, it is extremely fun. It's a bit of an anthology in the sense that you play through multiple chapters with different characters who have their own strengths and weaknesses and things. And while the controls in particular can be a little fiddly, I mostly had a blast with it, and it was one of my favorite game releases from all the way back in 2022. It helps that it is from Wolfeye Studios, which is made up of some of the former devs of Arcane, if that happens to be a selling point for you, but Weird West is very fun and people should take a look at it. Speaking of really fun isometric games, though, we then have Showgunners. I think the best way to describe Showgunners is like a video game version of the movie Running Man, as it takes place in a dystopian cyberpunk future in which we battle it out on a game show where we kill each other, which is separated out into an exploration phase and then the tactical turn-based battles. I really, really like Showgunners, and with it being 70% off, bringing it down to just $9 US, that is a fantastic deal. If you haven't played it and you're looking for a relatively short, fun TRPG, man, that is a good one. Next up, we've got Broken Roads, the sort of Australian Fallout with an odd sort of morality compass system that is a bit of a novelty, to be sure. Broken Roads didn't have the best release, to be honest, for a wide variety of reasons, many of which have been at least attempted to be addressed since it has initially released, and in some ways I think it's gotten a lot better since that initial release, even if it's not like a complete overhaul or anything. So if you wanted to check that game out for yourself at a reasonable price at 60% off, bringing it down to just $14 US, I think that's as good a time as any to take a look at it. Second from the end here, though, the next one I wanted to mention is Torment, Tides of Numenera. Admittedly not one of my favorite CRPGs personally, it's a game heavily inspired by things like Planescape Torment, as the name would likely tell you. Now, what I really do like about Torment, though, is in particular the setup for its story. You play as the cast-off of an entity known as the Changing God. Basically, there is this entity, the Changing God, who possesses people, and yet when he switches bodies and he's done with them, those bodies become inhabited by a new consciousness that is basically birthed into existence when that happens, and these people are known as cast-offs, which honestly is a really cool story idea. But the rest of the game is mostly narrative, very heavy on dialogue and text, as you would expect from anything coming out of Planescape Torment, I would imagine. And much of its combat and encounters in general are handled through what they call crises, which aren't necessarily all combat focused, and I think the actual RPG mechanics of this one can be a bit strange at times, especially in relation to how combat and stuff works, but I do think the story is worth experiencing for yourself at least once. And it being a gigantic $9 US right now makes that a pretty palatable decision if you're looking for something a little on the stranger side to dip your toes into. And then last but not least, I wanted to call out Solasta 1, primarily because Solasta 2 is upcoming and currently in development and looks to be a massive overhaul in terms of quality, but I already liked Solasta 1, so that wasn't a terribly difficult sell for me at least. With that in mind, Solasta 1, admittedly not the best looking game, but it does a really great job of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons rules as written, mind you with a bunch of their own homebrew from their Solasta world involved, but the actual rules are followed pretty much to a T. And While I didn't love the main campaign from Solasta 1, like I thought it was good enough, mind you, but I do think their best work actually comes from the DLC, which is why I wanted to mention this sale, because if you're looking to play it ahead of the release of Solasta 2, you can get the Lightbringer edition, which includes the base game plus all of its DLC, and there was a lot of it, all for about $32 US. And that's before you even start talking about the fact that there's like a dungeon and campaign editor that allows you to set up and make your own campaigns and stuff to experience, that you can even play with friends via multiplayer. So overall, I think Solasta 1 is very cool, but that is as good a place as any to wrap up this particular video. So I hope you enjoyed a look at all these games. I hope you managed to snag a good deal on some of them. If you do, I would love to hear about it down in the comments section below. Or if you know there's any other deals you see that you wanted to call out, by all means drop them down there, as I can't cover absolutely everything, but these are the ones that stood out to me. And if you want to see more of this kind of thing in the future, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.